All right. Hello, everyone. There are many times when one side of the motion in a debate looks too good to be true. And this is not only because the motion could have been worded better, or that people just don't know that much about emotion, or that there's a silver bullet that people are forgetting. It's more often to be the case that the outcomes depicted are explained to be objectively good. And it's probably easier for our moral intuitions and first impressions to tell us that one side is pretty damn easy to do. And this isn't a misguided belief, by the way. Often it is the case that a morally intuitive side is quite easy to defend, so long as you explain it thoroughly, as with all debates. So, what I want to do now is to focus on how we can unpack these motions, contest them, and defend them very well. Let's say the motion was this house prefers a world without lying. I think intuitively, it probably is easy to come up with many reasons as to why lying has circumstances in which it is good, like lying for your safety, and circumstances in which it is bad, like lying in order to deceive and take advantage of another person. But the reason as to why I might argue that this motion looks too good to be true is that government side has a lot of leeway to explain that a world without lying, where the possibility of lying was never possible to begin with, is one where we could create more just social structures that presume honesty and good faith from other actors, which prevents the possibility of most crime in the first place and the need for authoritative and disproportionate justice systems, and most barriers that preemptively discriminate individuals on the basis of the distrust that is created between people. Now, in my opinion, I find this argument and construction for the case to be very compelling, especially if it is proven well. So, if you were in the opposition, I think it's important to note that it's not enough to contest this argument or the construction of this world by merely saying that lying is a good thing and that there are morally good circumstances in which it is justified. That isn't necessarily the debate anymore. Rather, the first layer you would want to unpack from this too good to be true world is the dystopia that underlies their world building. So here, you might want to say that a world without lying is not one without unjust structures. It actually might permanently cement inequalities on the basis of circumstance and privilege because there is no possibility of deceit or crime or disorder that can come from lying to be able to create opposition to such social structures in the first place. And then, that is why you might argue that the possibility of lying under these circumstances is very good. So that's one way that can contest this world. The formulation of this world is contested through the social structures that are assumed to be the case once this world is created. In another example, let's say the motion was, this house opposes the trend towards becoming political cosmopolitan, which simply just means that society is becoming more accepting of a conception of a universal community that pursues universal moral standards and the establishment of global political structures. Now, if you were in government, you might anticipate that opposition's best version of the political cosmopolitan is actually pretty amazing or too good to be true. They can conceptualize this pursuit as one that works tirelessly towards alleviating global poverty, starvation, and solving global problems like climate change, conflict, dictatorship, etc., etc. The list goes on and on. And for many valid reasons, it's quite easy for opposition to say that a world that goes against the political cosmopolitan is even more heavily divided and more prone to future degradation and suffering, which is a very convincing moral argument. So, if you were government, it might not be that strategic to say that dictatorship and climate change are good things. I think it's a losing battle, of course, to put effort into some moral relativism argument that may not necessarily engage with the case of opposition that well. So instead of focusing on the objectively good outcomes that their world forwards, again, like solving climate change, poverty, starvation, etc., etc., instead of focusing on those objectively good outcomes, focus on contesting the moral justification of their process. You may say that it is morally unjust to create their ideal world if it involves the instrumentalization of smaller states and their agency, and the institutionalization of violent structures that have to reinforce the global world order that they want. So in concrete terms, all you would need to do is to prove that the trend towards the political cosmopolitan is inherently violent and evil, which is not too difficult to prove, by the way. Saying that it is this mentality that causes more social upheaval when authoritarian states that are toppled for the sake of democracy, or when states are sanctioned and denied aid for the sake of forcing compliance to a global order, or when proxy wars for global dominance are made in the name of certain ideologies. So that's not that too difficult to prove. What's more difficult is making sure that you're consistent in demonstrating that the trend is immoral, that the process involves all of these things, and therefore that's where you create the argument. Now here, the debate is not merely one on who solves climate change or who has better peace and stability, but rather it's about the process of pursuing these ends. And that's where I think you're able to unpack a lot of the difficulties of engaging with many of these too good to be true motions. All right, that's as far as I'll go for now. And I think in future videos, since we're already starting with principled argumentation, we'll probably tackle the Kantian and utilitarian dilemma in future debates. But this is a really good starting point, at least when we're discussing how to unpack objectively good outcomes and contest them in debates without having to just agree that all of these things are good in the first place. All right, thanks for watching and have a great day. Goodbye, everyone.